I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown, one of the final episodes of the year, because this Wednesday I'm going to be giving my final predictions for the 2026 Oscars, who is going to win before the award show, just a week away now. But if you're new to the channel, welcome. We've been on our 10th season predicting the Oscars all the way back since October, and we've been doing very well this season. I've been very happy with our Oscar nominations. We were top 2% in awards expert from Gold Derby, Golden Globes. We did pretty well. Got some surprises at the Actors Awards, so excited to ultimately make my predictions here at the Oscars. But before we make those final predictions on Wednesday, we always like to do a video at least once a week, Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so I didn't want to delay this video and did want to do a little bit of a fun one here, maybe a shorter one, but a bit of a thought exercise of 7 potential upsets at the Oscars. Take a look at some categories that I think are vulnerable to have some upsets and make some kind of bold predictions, or frankly, any kind of win that would be an upset, a surprise, something that hasn't happened that's going against historical precedent or stats or the way the momentum is going, because the Oscars usually like to throw us at least 1 or 2 upsets, so it's fun to at least kind of recognize and figure out maybe where those upsets are going to be. And then also maybe even in our Oscar predictions, try to have those calculated upsets to try to predict where the Oscars are going, where the momentum is shifting. I'm going to break it down here on this video, but as always, feel free to comment below. Let me know your thoughts on these potential upsets. Let me know if there's any other potential upsets that you could see happening. Love to hear that in the comments down below. But without further ado, let's jump into things. Starting off with my first potential upset is that I think Wagner Moura could win for Best Lead Actor. I think a lot of the conversation at the beginning of the season was Chalamet versus DiCaprio. Then all of a sudden, MBJ wins for Best Actor at the Actors. So now it's going to be MBJ, Michael B. Jordan versus Timothée Chalamet. But what about Wagner Moura? The fact is, regardless of what happens in this category, there are going to be some historical stats that are broken. Chalamet, if he wins, having not won BAFTA or the Actors, would be a huge overcome factor in the sense that that hasn't happened in this Best Lead Actor category in 20 years since Sean Penn for Mystic River. If Michael B. Jordan wins, having only won Best Actor at the SAG Actors Awards, then that would be a huge kind of overcome historical precedent that would be set, because that hasn't happened for this category. It has happened in other acting categories, but just winning the Actors, just winning SAG, that's a unique thing. It usually doesn't really happen for the kind of big Best Actor winners. But what about Wagner Moura? The benefit for him is that when he's competed with some of these other people, he's actually won. He beat out Michael B. Jordan for Sinners at the Golden Globes for Best Drama Actor. So in a competition of head-to-head, he's actually beat out what I think a lot of people are thinking as a favorite for Michael B. Jordan. I thought that was notable. We know the Golden Globes are a more international group, the same way the Oscars are. Maybe they have that preference towards The Secret Agent. And Wagner Moura, on one hand, you could say he's weak because he wasn't nominated at BAFTA, he wasn't nominated at the Actors, but you could also say, guess what, he is nominated at the Oscars, and that's where he's competing. So, in a way, Michael B. Jordan and Timothée Chalamet lost at the BAFTAs, but Wagner Moura hasn't lost yet. When he's been on the ballot with these other actors going up against them, in the one chance that we do have, that being the Golden Globes, Wagner Moura actually beat out Michael B. Jordan. And we have seen this before, even recently in 2018. I correctly predicted Regina King to win for If Beale Street Could Talk, when that year the BAFTAs and the Actors split and Regina King was not nominated at either award show, but was nominated at the Oscars and ultimately did win there. We know The Secret Agent is a well-liked movie. It got nominated for Best Picture. We know that there is a Brazilian contingent, or fans of Brazilian cinema within the Academy, having nominated I'm Still Here and The Secret just last year and The Secret Agent this year. So there's an appreciation for it. And why not an international performance? If we're talking about the Academy as an international group, they've been kind of halfway nominating international performances. It was Zoe Saldana wins for a half English, half Spanish performance, but we've seen Ariana DeBose win similarly. A lot of her part there in West Side Story, many parts were spoken in Spanish. Even someone like a Yu Jin-yun from Minari, most of that was not in English. So maybe it's finally time for the Academy to fully recognize an international performance, which this would be here in Wagner Moura, in a year where there's no clear frontrunner. And I think it kind of makes sense on a 2,000-foot kind of a point of view. Of course, the BAFTAs went with the Brit. Of course, the Actors went with Michael B. Jordan, the mainstream pick of the big blockbuster in Sinners. the Oscars maybe want to go with the more prestigious pick, the slightly elevated pick. In this case, I think would either be maybe Timothée Chalamet, but also I think could apply to Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent. So don't count him out just yet. I think a lot of people are going MBJ, or Chalamet, but then maybe Moura kind of sneaks in at the last minute and wins. Don't be shocked if that happens. That is definitely a potential upset. And then my second potential upset is Teyana Taylor for Best Supporting Actress for One Battle After Another. Now, this may not be a traditional huge upset. I think a lot of people would be not shocked at any of the winners, frankly, in this category. But on betting sites, and I think amongst the general consensus online, because Amy Madigan won at SAG and Wunmi won at the BAFTAs, those are the top two contenders. But Teyana Taylor, I think, is absolutely still a contender here. And it would be an upset in the sense of how many actresses have won the Oscar, having just won the Golden Globe, not getting Critics' Choice, not getting a lot of critical prizes herself, that is only in the first third of the movie. That would be a huge thing to kind of overcome, in particular because she's not had a lot of acting credits to her name, so she doesn't have a lot of friends within the Academy, like, let's say, a Jamie Lee Curtis. It would be based on just the performance herself, and in particular, why I think this is a possibility is more so she kind of rides the wave of the success of the film. The question I have going to the Oscars is, what kind of a Best Picture winner is One Battle After Another? Now, it may not win. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I do think it's the frontrunner and is going to likely win at the Oscars. That's probably where I lean right now. But we've seen past frontrunners like Oppenheimer or Everything Everywhere All at Once get multiple acting wins. If One Battle After Another is another strong Best Picture contender where it gets maybe 6, 7 Oscars, it needs to get multiple acting wins. And I think you can easily explain away some of the other acting industry award wins. Wunmi Mosaku, of course she won at BAFTA. She's a British, so of course they're going to prefer her there. Amy Madigan, of course she won at the Actors. That's the mainstream pick from a blockbuster in Weapons. But the Academy, we know the Academy doesn't like Weapons. They only gave it one nomination. They didn't give it screenplay or editing or these other nominations that it easily, I think, could have gotten. So maybe there's a bias against that type of performance. Instead, when you have kind of a split area where maybe the British people like Wunmi, maybe some of the mainstream Hollywood types in the Academy like Amy Madigan, but maybe everyone overall just likes One Battle After Another and wants to give it as many wins as possible. That's the route for Teyana Taylor. That's her possibility there. So this category, as we all know, is very up in the air going into the Oscars, but I do think that Teyana Taylor would be a potential upset in the sense of she would really have no major precursors, not really the critical favorite, didn't win a Critics' Choice, didn't have any of the industry prizes, really had just won the Golden Globes, and then maybe goes on to win the Oscar. It would be fascinating if that ends up happening, and is, I think, a definite potential upset. Then my third potential upset, I went with Best Picture for Sinners. And this is maybe not, again, a crazy upset, but I think in the context of last year in April, we would be saying absolutely it's a crazy upset. What do you mean Sinners is going to win Best Picture? And I think in the context of even just the regular or the kind of non-Oscar fan, putting yourself in those shoes, it would be an absolute upset. Because the perception of the Oscars is that, oh, they're hashtag so white, they'll never award a black film like this. Oh, they're so indie, they'll never award a blockbuster like this. Oh, they don't like genre movies and horror movies, so they'll never award a movie like this. But if they ultimately do give it the top prize, Best Picture, hopefully those kind of critics will be silenced and realize, the Academy has grown and changed and is starting to reward all different kinds of movies since they're kind of 90s and 2000s reputation of the type of movie that maybe they've long held and long historically rewarded. This would be a huge change for this type of a movie, a big blockbuster horror film, action genre movie released early in the year to win. That almost never happens. So that would be a huge kind of accomplishment. And then even it would be an upset in the sense of us, the kind of hardcore Oscar fans that are following all those stats and things, because Sinners, having only won the Actors Award for Best Ensemble as their only kind of Best Picture prize, would be a huge thing to kind of overcome. It would indicate that technically anything is possible. That despite One Battle After Another dominating every season and having PGA, which is the most accurate, and having BAFTA and everything else, and an acting win and a screenplay and director, and if Sinners ends up still winning, it would be a huge kind of a blow to any kind of stats or point of view in that sense, and would indicate that truthfully the Oscars can go their own way, that the stats can only take you so far, and that ultimately anything could happen. If that's what Sinners ultimately means, I think it would be a huge kind of a sign, as maybe this is the new Academy, that the Academy does their own thing, that we can always look at things for guidance and references, but ultimately you never really know what's going to win. That's a real possibility. I'm not saying Sinners is going to win, but it's a real contender. I think some people see it online as 50-50. The betting odds still see it more like as 80-20. They don't give Sinners a very strong chance at winning Best Picture. So in that context, it would be, I think, to the regular person as well, a huge upset if it were to win Best Picture. Then my fourth potential upset, I went with The Secret Agent for Best International Film. And I think the logical pick is to go with Sentimental Value. It's won some of the precursors in this category. It got nominated for Best Directing and Best Editing and multiple acting nominations. So therefore, it's the most likely winner of this category because it's probably the most well-liked movie within the Oscars, right? Yes, but just last year, I'm Still Here beat out Amelia Perez. Amelia Perez also got on for Best Director, also had multiple acting nominees, which I'm Still Here did not. So what was the reason last year? Now, of course, Amelia Perez had that kind of obvious and big controversy blow up, so people didn't want to vote for Amelia Perez, and ultimately it did go to I'm Still Here. But there's still a question that I have of Sentimental Value's overall strength. We know it's good at getting nominated. Do we know it's good at winning? At the Golden Globes, it didn't win. It only won at the BAFTAs. And then the question is, all right, well, why didn't it actually perform better at the BAFTAs? It probably should have gotten a Stellan Skarsgård Supporting Actor win, or maybe even an Inga Ipsa or Lilius, or maybe even screenplay generally. It's kind of odd that a movie that was so well liked at the BAFTAs ends up only getting that one win in international feature. I also have some questions in terms of the international factor of it. There may be some Oscar voters that don't want to vote for Sentimental Value because it's not international enough. You have Elle Fanning in the film, who is a big-time major American actress, speaking English in the movie. There are large stretches of the movie that are spoken entirely in English. Will that feel foreign enough to Academy member voters? Does that feel like a true international film? Versus something like The Secret Agent, many different locations in Brazil, many different kind of unknown faces to the Academy that feel kind of new and fresh and foreign and different, and maybe feels a little bit more true to the spirit of the category. There may be some people that don't just vote based on which movie they like better, but actually based on the international factor of things. So on paper, yes, Sentimental Value should win, but just last year, Amelia Perez had more nominations than I'm Still Here, and I'm Still Here ended up winning. Secret Agent, I don't think has a 0% chance of happening. It's a definite potential upset. I think a lot of people are just, penciling in Sentimental Value, and I may end up doing the same thing, but I'll be very nervous on Oscars night of The Secret Agent potentially winning. Okay, now my fifth and sixth potential upsets, I'm going to group them together because they're both going to the same film. I think F1 can win for Best Visual Effects or for Best Editing. So we'll talk about editing first. We think that the frontrunner probably to win for Best Sound is F1. That's its probably likely Oscar. But we know the movie got into Best Picture because of technical support. It didn't get in for director or screenplay or any of those kind of above the line categories. It got in for Best Picture because there's a mass amount of support for the technical side of things. What do we also know this year? The Oscars are limiting people's voting abilities based on what movies they have seen. So you can't always vote in a category if you haven't seen all of the nominees. What does that mean to me? It means that there's probably going to be more people below the line voting on below the line categories. There's probably going to be less people within the Academy, within the actors who maybe see the major top movies to vote in the acting categories, but aren't going to watch every movie nominated for VFX because sometimes you have sole nominees like Jurassic World Rebirth. Are you going to watch that movie just to vote in this category? Maybe not. So what that indicates is that there's going to be a lot of tech people voting on what the tech winners are going to be. We know that the tech favorite right now in many regards is F1. One Battle is the favorite for Best Editing, but if we assume that F1 is going to win for Best Sound, well, we know that there's a strong correlation between the winner of Sound and the winner of Best Editing. As a matter of fact, from the years of 2012 to 2021, 10 years in a row, the winner of Best Editing also won at least one sound prize. Now, that hasn't happened in the past 3 years. There has been some splits, but historically, there's been a strong connection between these two categories. So if we're so sure that F1 is winning for Best Sound, why is it also not going to win for Best Editing if there's a connection there? Now, I understand the precursors haven't been favorable to F1. We're talking about potential upsets. Let's not forget about this. These are kind of long shot picks, but I think the fact that a lot of technical people are going to be voting on the tech categories. We know that F1, I think, is the tech favorite of these types of people based on its number of nominations and still getting into Best Picture. And then you factor in the combination between sound and editing correlation. I think there's a strong case there. And then the visual effects side, similar kind of an argument. The tech people are going to maybe want to vote for their favorite movie of the year, which may be F1. And we know that visual effects, usually when there is a Best Picture nominee, the Best Picture nominee usually wins for Best Visual Effects. Now, that has changed in the past couple of years, but historically, a movie like 1917 will win for Best Visual Effects, even though it's not necessarily crazy notable visual effects, but it's just a movie that everyone likes. And even in years in which there is no Best Picture nominees, it usually goes to the VFX nominee that feels the most Best Picture-like. So a movie like First Man, with kind of more hidden, subtle VFX, realistic VFX, beats out a movie like Avengers Infinity War, which has more of the obvious Thanos and character-driven VFX. So F1, I think, fits into that narrative. It's more of the First Man, whereas Avatar is a little bit more of the Infinity War. F1, unlike Avatar, is nominated for Best Picture. We know Avatar has been on a downslide ever since its release. We thought at one point it would be a Best Picture nominee. It was not. It ended up only getting a couple of nominations. F1 is frankly the type of movie that would win in a non-Avatar year. Now, it may have just gone up against the juggernaut of Avatar and people just check it off because they're so impressed by the VFX, but it is a different style, and F1 is the traditional style of VFX, the hidden, the realistic, there's actually a lot of VFX but you don't necessarily realize it, point of view. It got nominated for Best Picture. It's really well liked. It is the kind of a typical path in a non-Avatar year. Will that beat out Avatar? Maybe, but maybe people are a little bit tired of Avatar. They've already given it 2 visual effects awards. Maybe they want to try something different. Don't be surprised if F1 starts to clean up early on in the show in some of these technical categories, like a Best Editing, like a Best Sound, like a Best Visual Effects. And then my final potential upset, I went with Train Dreams winning Best Cinematography, which is a long shot, but when we talk about the cinematography category, we talk about 3 important precursors: BSC, the British Society of Cinematographers, BAFTA, and ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers. And we know that BSC and BAFTA went with one battle after another. We don't know what ASC ended up going with. Now, it's also going to be really breaking late, so and announced pretty late, soon before the Oscar nominations come out. So I think a lot of people are going to just automatically assume, oh, it's one battle after another when they're making their predictions without relying on ASC. But let's say ASC comes out and Train Dreams ends up winning there. Now, all of a sudden, it's a real in contention, in my opinion, because Train Dreams also won at the Critics' Choice Awards, so you know there's some appreciation of the style of the film. We know that Train Dreams is probably going to win 0 Oscars, but the movie was nominated for Best Picture, so we know that it is a well-liked movie. Maybe if the Oscars want to reward this movie, this is the category that I think that makes the most sense. You have cinematographer Adolfo Veloso, who uses a lot of natural light in this handheld camera that reminds me a lot of Chivo Lubezki, who's actually won 3 or 4 Academy Awards, a huge Oscar favorite and beloved cinematographer. This movie has that similar kind of reminiscent style. Netflix has been doing a lot of campaigning for the cinematography side of things. Not only the filmmakers who have been constantly talking about Adolfo and his genius, but multiple videos on their Netflix YouTube page with hundreds of thousands of views talking about how they lit the film. They've been really placing an emphasis on the visuals of the movie. And if you like the movie, or even if you don't like the movie, I think everyone can agree the visuals are the best part of it. It is that kind of a lyrical, beautiful, outside nature kind of a feel that the movie brings. And so much of that is attributed to its cinematography. So if the Academy wants to reward Train Dreams with something, if ASC ends up going with Train Dreams, it is a bit of a long shot. I think a lot of people are going, oh, Sinners are one battle, like they are in many other categories, but what about Train Dreams? What about that as a potential ASC winner? And then if it does win ASC, that with Critics' Choice gives it a strong potential possibility to win at the Oscars. So don't necessarily rule out Train Dreams just yet. It could potentially win for Best Cinematography for a potential upset. The one note is we are recording this before ASC, so this may be completely, false in one battle wins ASC, and then that's the end of things. But just want to kind of put it out there in advance of that. And if it doesn't win ASC, the argument still stands in terms of Train Dreams. If they want to win an award, it kind of maybe surprises here and gets the win here. But it's number 7 potential upset because it's probably not going to happen. We tried to front load the more likely potential upsets at the beginning of the video. But feel free to let me know in the comments down below. What are some of your personal potential upsets that you see happening on Oscars night? I'd love to hear that. And then stay tuned. Wednesday, just a couple days, I'm going to be releasing my predictions for the Oscars, my final predictions in all 24 categories with casting, and should be a lot of fun. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.